Today, we're going to be going over an advanced guide for getting your ex back. Now, we're going to be going beyond just maybe the simple stuff that you may have heard elsewhere, such as, the no contact rule and writing a heartfelt, handwritten letter and mailing it to your ex, and, some of the other such things you may have heard before. Um, but first, before we go ahead and get into that, hello, my name is Clay with modernlove.life, where we help you get the great loving relationship that you're looking for without having to play mind games, without having to play hard to get, and without having to pretend to be someone or something that you are not. Because you, of course, deserve to be loved for the unique, amazing, and wonderful person that you are. Um, okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. So, first, we want to talk about what is the basics, the beginner version of all of this. And that's probably something that you've heard before. Do no contact for a month. Either they'll crawl over broken shards of glass to get back together with you because they miss you so much, or you can then follow up by writing a heartfelt letter to them, and voila, bada bing bada boom, the two of you are back together, riding off into the sunset, right? And does that work for some people? I mean, I guess it must, statistically speaking, right? Anything's going to work some of the time. But for a lot of people, that's not going to cut it. It's not going to get them back together. And this can often lead people down a lot of rabbit holes where it comes to learning about things like, attachment styles or body language or the hidden, way that men or women communicate, or reading, certain psychological triggers or reverse psychology, or playing hard to get, or doing what you can do to, not come across as desperate or needy or something like that. And, there might be some value in all of this. But in my experience, this is focusing in too deep on the wrong things. Now, when you're going to get advanced, we're going to be focusing in deeper, but not on the wrong things. Um, these sorts of things are going to be the wrong approach because they are not focusing on what needs to happen in order to get back together. So, if we're to just basically draw a line from where you are right now to the place where maybe you and your partner get back together, there's going to need to be a couple certain things that need to happen along that path, right? So if you're not talking, you're going to need to start talking again. If you're talking but it's not very deep, you're going to need to start talking in a more significant and deeper way. If you're talking in a meaningful and significant way, you're going to need to start to bridge that gap between platonic and romantic. And, maybe there's some other complications in there, like a rebound relationship or something like that. But what is it going to take to go from one milestone to the next, to the next, to the next? And, this is where oftentimes a lot of the things that people focus too much on fall flat. It's like, okay, I could spend a lot of time thinking about attachment styles, but what does that actually get me? I mean, maybe you can use like, okay, I have a certain attachment style, an anxious attachment style or whatever. What is it that I can learn about myself in that process and use it to fuel my own personal growth? That can be very valuable. But in terms of like saying, okay, they have an avoidant attachment style. What are you going to do about it? Right. What are you going to do? Are you just going to like not interact with them and wait for them to come to you? Maybe, but it's not really informing you about what you need to do or what your next move might be, or all sorts of other things like that. And if you say, okay, if they're not talking to me and we're going to have to get to the point where we're talking, what is it going to be that's going to make that happen? Obviously, there's going to have to be a part of them that says, I want to actually start talking to you. It's starting to feel like the right thing for me to do to start talking to you again. So it's about the feeling, right? Or if you're already talking, but you need to deepen the connection, it's about, okay, I start to feel more comfortable. I start to feel more trust to deepen that connection, to feel comfortable opening up and sharing more of myself with my partner. Or if it's, having deep connections to maybe bridging the romantic or platonic, barrier there by doing something like flirting or something like, I mean, you're not in a platonic situation, but sometimes the interactions may just be platonic because you're just not at that place where it makes sense to take it to that romantic level. But then you might say something like, okay, it's going to have to feel comfortable or right or somehow inviting for that prospect to happen. And then, of course, getting to the point where you're at some point and then officially getting back together, they're going to have to feel a certain sense of trust, of emotion, of romance, of confidence in your future together, or of all of these things in order to make this happen and to feel comfortable saying, yes, let's get back together. Let's give it another shot. So the key metric here is feeling. Okay. It's not attraction. It's not like you can just, sleep your way into a relationship, at least not most of the time. Of course, you could do it some of the time, but let's be honest. High value people aren't just going to be in a relationship with you because you're sleeping together, right? I know that so many times people are just so terrified about being in the friend zone, which in my opinion, you don't have to worry about because you're really not in the friend zone. But they're so worried about it that they rush to sleeping together. And they often sacrifice the emotional connection because they're so terrified about being in the friend zone that they just rush for that sort of physical intimacy that they sort of neglect the emotional side of things, and then they end up in a sort of hookup kind of situation or a friend with benefits kind of situation or something like that. And that's not what we want to do either. So it's really important that we do recognize that the key thing to be focusing in on here is the emotional connection. You and your partner already most likely feel attracted to one another. Of course, there's like a tiny asterisk with that because, sometimes people don't get into relationships because they're attracted to one another. Sometimes they just do it because, hey, you've got money and I am a shallow person. Or sometimes they do it because, oh, hey, you seem like you're, famous or have some sort of status and I want to be with someone like that, right? Obviously, that's a different set of circumstances than what probably 99% of you out there are dealing with. Most of you are probably saying like, okay, we met, we had a genuine connection, we fell in love honestly with one another, and then something happened and our relationship broke up, right? It's not like, hey, I'm an A-list celebrity and someone just wants to, be in a relationship with me so that they can, stroke their own ego and feel important or whatever, right? Most of the time it's simply just, hey, we fell in love with each other, but something didn't work out for some reason. So it's going to be, for most of y'all, the emotional connection that we're going to need to focus in. Um, Attraction isn't really something that you need to focus in on because unless there's been, just something tremendous happening that's going to either, maybe you gained or lost a tremendous amount of weight, or maybe you had some sort of terrible accident that, caused you to be physically different in some way or something like that. Attraction isn't something that you really need to worry about. Aside from, things like that, things like having a massive personality break where it's like, okay, one day you were this sort of person, the next day it's like I just don't even know you anymore, right? Those are times when attraction might be meaningful to focus in on. Or obviously situations where there was no attraction to begin with, but someone just wanted to be in a relationship with you for money or something like that. But again, most of y'all who are in a genuine relationship with someone who is genuinely attracted to you, you don't have to focus in on the attraction. It's the feeling, right? So what's the feeling that we need to do to get from point A to point B to point C to point D and on until we eventually cross that finish line? This is really the big thing that we should be focusing in on when we're talking about the advanced method for getting back together. And we'll be getting into that in just a moment here. But before we do, if you do like these videos that I do for you, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're not already, hit the notification bell. If you haven't already for some reason, all of these things do help us out with the YouTube algorithm, as well as if you could just drop a comment to help a guy out with his low self-esteem, or at least win the favor of the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, so what is it that we want to do to actually start to improve this emotional connection? Now, this is where a lot of the powerful things that we've been talking about in this channel for a while come into play. Advanced relational skills. They really help to clear out the blockages that could be going on between you and your partner on that emotional level. Being able to do things like create an emotional connection through empathy, being able to do things like vulnerably and with composure, share certain thoughts and feelings about what's going on with you that actually inspire more trust and connection. Things like that. Things like just being, physically present rather than off in your mind wondering, well, what attachment style is it? Oh, they did that thing with the straw. I read in a body language book that means that they're, attracted to me or something like that. Like, if when you're doing things like that, you're pulling yourself out of the present moment, and you're making it more difficult to actually create that emotional connection, because there's so many things that are just going to slide under the radar because you're too busy looking for signs of this or clues of that or something, that you're not able to be physically present with someone to actually pick up on the emotional cues that they're dropping. There could be so many opportunities to have a deep emotional connection with someone if you just ask them a little bit more about something, ask them how they felt about something, ask for more detail about something, that you might miss if you're just busy wondering, like, well, which one of us has the upper hand in this situation? Do I have more control, or do they have more control? I need to make it seem like I have more control, because, as we all know, reverse psychology says that you need to beat them into submission through dominance and control and all of that, and then, only then, will they fall in love with you, right? um, that's You're going to miss out on these opportunities to connect. As we talked about yesterday, the thing that we all have in common is that we're human beings. And you, as a human being, like, do you find that you're more wanting to be in a relationship with someone if they have beaten you into submission and they have more power and control and the upper hand over you? Or is that irrelevant? Or if they are focused on that, does that seem a little bit desperate and try hard? I don't know. Start to think about it yourself. Um, Most people out there are probably going to say, hey, the thing that matters the most is the emotional connection. The thing that matters probably for you is the emotional connection, and thus it shouldn't be much of a stretch to say, my ex, if they feel a powerful emotional connection between us, they're going to have a damn good reason for wanting to get back together. So we really want to focus in on that emotional connection. Of course, the advanced relational skills we've talked about for ages on this channel are going to help you out with that. You can sign up for ESP to learn more about that if that's new to you. But that's what we've been helping people with for ages and ages now. But if we're to take an even deeper cut beneath that, what's truly going to serve you more so than all of this stuff is focusing in on your way of being. Okay. Now here's an example. Many years ago, when I was first starting this whole coaching thing here, there was a time before I took my very first coaching call. Just as I'm sure any coach can tell you their story about the first coaching call they had. But I was admittedly a little bit nervous, and I saw it on the calendar. It was coming up, and I knew that I had a few days before it was going to happen. And so I knew that I could either just feel nervous and then just try to fake it till I make it, just try and, make it seem like I'm cool and in control and know what I'm doing and all that, but really I'm melting down inside. But that would be inauthentic, right? Because the anxiety and the fear that I felt would come through in some form or other. It would come through the cracks in some form. Sure, I might have the right body language. Sure, I might have the right, you know, fancy pants clothes or something. I mean, I work from home and I don't have a lot of a good reason to wear nice clothes. So I like to do it for these videos. But anyway, um, um, or I might have the right body language, or I might have the right questions to ask, or I might, have the right whatever. But if I'm feeling anxious, it's going to come across. Either I'm going to try too hard to impress somebody, either I'm going to, give too much, or I'm going to, do something that's overcompensating for something in some capacity or other because of that way that I feel inside. I didn't want that. So what I did was I spent the time leading up to that first call really focusing in on my way of being, really getting in there and doing, certain meditations to really allow myself to step into, really believing that I could be a confident and effective coach. And when it came to actually getting on that first call, I was ready. I believed all the way down to my core that I could help this person, that I could be a powerful coach for them. And if I do say so myself, I think I did a pretty good job. But the thing is that I wasn't faking it till I was making it. I was just focusing it on my way of being, authentically becoming it, and then from there, um, I didn't feel like I needed to overcompensate for something. And that allowed me to really step into a lot of the advanced relational skills, just being present with that person, listening to what their challenges were and what their opportunities for growth and progress and all that stuff were, rather than, making it about me. Because, coaching isn't about me. It's about you, the person that I would be coaching. And so once I was able to get my own stuff out of the way, adopt the ideal way of being for all of this, then I was able to bring forward the best of myself. And so that's really what you're going to have to do when it comes to getting back together with your ex in an advanced sort of way, because you have two options, right? Um, First of all, there's the beginner surface level stuff. Not knocking it, because I don't know when y'all broke up with your partners or something. If it was just last week or something, okay, yeah, maybe you need to learn about things like, what is no contact, what is a letter that you write to someone, why is it you need to get your emotions under control, and all of that. Maybe that's where you're at. But if you're looking for advanced level stuff, we could either go down the path of just micro analyzing things and just being like, well, my ex is a narcissist with an insecure attachment personality, and their love language is physical touch, and they only respond to questions about facts. And so what I need to do is I need to just hyper analyze this text message, because they used a certain emoji, and they used a certain phrase in a way, and you can go down that path and really drive yourself crazy, thinking about things so much to the point where you can't even actually respond in the present moment, to the point where getting on the phone with them is too overwhelming, because you can't edit and filter and pace yourself and think about things before you make a move in real time. Or you can't actually meet up with them, and so you're just trying to text, and you're not getting anywhere, because you're totally missing the point of the emotional connection, which is the second track that you could go on, which is to focus in on the emotional connection, which is what I would recommend that you do. Here's my elbow coming at you there. Focus in on that emotional connection, and then show up as someone who's ready and able to connect in the present moment. Not because you've memorized 101 different lines, not because you've memorized the right, clever comebacks and the appropriate way to respond when they say something like, "Oh, are you dating anyone?" Or any of that stuff, but because you have cultivated such a strong and unshakable way of being that you can just show up as the person that you need to create a magnetic connection that brings the two of you closer together. And that's obviously what I'd recommend that you do. I should hope that's been pretty clear over the videos of mine that you may have seen. Um, but if that is something that you do want a little bit of help with, we do have our Aligned with Love promotion going on for the next few days here. You can find a link in the description of this YouTube video to a Google Doc that I put together really quickly. I didn't have enough time to write a fancy sign up page or anything, so I just put a goofy little Google Doc together. You're more than welcome to sign up. I think it's a great offer, if I do say so myself. And if you're on Facebook, there'll be a link in the comment section below this video as well too. Anyway, with that being said, once again, if you do like what we're doing, please make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Please make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the notification bell as well too. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk to some folks here in the chat section. We'll go ahead and start with our super chats. Once again, I don't do these live streams for the super chat donations, but I do appreciate them very much. And it is my understanding as well that I must acknowledge people that leave super chats. So that's just how it is. We do super chats, and then when we run out, if we have time left over, we'll do the people that did not leave super chats. Anyway, with that being said, we have a super chat from Essex Primordial, if that is your real name. Is there a question here? I'm scrolling through to see if there is a question. I actually don't see a question, so I think this might be like a nice little like, "Hey Clay, you're doing a great job. Thanks so much." Well, if that's the case, then thank you very much, Essex. I do appreciate this. If you do have a question, please pop it down in the comment section below, and we can address that. Next up, we have Zachary, who says, My ex and I took a month break in June. Then I reached out for her birthday. Then we are talking again. It is inconsistent on how interactive she is. Um, we met up in June before we took that break, and she gave me my belongings along with some gifts. I gave her, along with gifts that I gave her, and vice versa. I never wanted my hoodies that I gave her. She said that she would just donate them. Um, as of August, she sent me a video of herself dancing with her friends at a birthday party wearing my hoodie. She said initially she never wanted it because it hurt too much since uh, it reminds her of me. We were flirtatious and making plans 3 weeks ago. She had her week off of nursing school, but since she started, she has gone missing in action, and I am not sure what to do. I tried to reach out 2 weeks ago, and no response from her. Okay, so again, I've never been to nursing school. I don't know what that's like, but I could easily imagine that the whole process of going back to school and just going from like, hey, I've got a ton of free time on my hands because it's summer, to suddenly saying like, hey, here's your curriculum, here's your things that you have to read, here's your homework, here's the whatever nurse stuff you may have to do. It could be a little bit overwhelming, and I don't know how she's been handling that. I don't know if it's been a stressful experience for her, if it's been, something she's been able to just sort of like glide through, or if it's been like, hey, I'm packed to the gills with homework and assignments and things like that. So potentially there could just be an adjustment period on her end. Um, However, it has been 2 weeks, so I would imagine she would have had time to come up for air at least once during that particular time to perhaps message you back. The fact that she sent you that video of her dancing with the hoodie on, that she very obviously associates with you and your relationship with one another. I mean, I think it's a positive sign. It's basically her way of saying that she's thinking about you. So if we're to take this back to the emotional level, she's obviously thinking about you, and she obviously is feeling positive feelings for you. She wasn't doing that. I mean, it's not like she sent you a video of her burning it in a garbage can or something like that. So she feels positive things for you. In terms of what to do if she's not contacting you, what I would do is I'd get curious, right? Because there's a gap in understanding. She's not contacting you. You want her to contact you. What is that gap, right? We can fill in that gap by overanalyzing things ourselves and say, oh, well, she's not interested. Well, she's the woman. She wants you to really pursue her, or all these other sorts of things. And is it true? I don't know. Maybe. But who actually does have the best shot of actually knowing why she's not contacting you? It's her, right? It's her. So rather than worrying about this too much, what I'd rather see you do is to just ask her what's going on, and to allow her to kind of step through that doorway to get back in contact with you, and to give you a sort of sense about what's going on with her. By the way, this is all stuff that we talk about inside of Effortless Connection, which is over at modernlove.life/EC. That's our communication course, by the way. But you could easily just say something like, "Hey, I texted you a few weeks ago. Haven't heard back from you. Not sure if maybe it's just the stress of the new school year, or if maybe there's something that I did that makes you feel uncomfortable. But if there's anything going on, please just let me know. I'd love to be able to just catch up with you and see how school is going," or something along those lines. And then she has the opportunity to come forward and to let you know what's going on. And if you don't hear back from her, then you can easily do things like run one-way spikes of doom, or perhaps some other strategies in there as well too. But it's really going to be important for you to focus in on your way of being through all of this, because it's not just a matter of saying the right things, doing the right strategies, having the right words. It's also a matter of actually embodying this all the way down to your core. Okay, like what we said yesterday, I could come on here and have my little notes here and be anxious and fumbling around with my papers and be like, gosh, guys, by the way, if you like this video, be sure to, give this a thumbs up and subscribe. But that's just me trying to paper over my anxiety. But I could say the same thing from a place of feeling confident in my own skin and say, hey, if you do like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. And that's going to come across a lot differently, even though it's the same words, right? So we really want to make sure, and I get it. That's a dramatic example. And I know it's not going to be that, comically obvious for most people, but it is going to come through no matter what, especially when we're dealing with someone that we were in a romantic relationship with, who probably knows us better than most other people out there. So anyway, that's what I'd recommend if you're not in contact with her right now, Zachary, and she's just been sort of missing in action since the beginning of the school year. Hope that helps you out. Next up, we have Essex again. Okay, great. So you do have something here. Did I miss something? Let me just scroll back and make sure I didn't miss something here. I know this is riveting video. Okay, I don't see anything else. So this is what we got to go with here. I've been hanging out with my ex recently, into our 2-month breakup. She has been talking to and possibly seeing another guy, but she still tries to connect with me. I feel like she just wants to be friends. And that's all I'm seeing from Essex. Oh, there we go. Um, she has been going places with me, as well as sleeping, cuddling, and talking to me on the phone and through text. But she still makes it known that she wants to see other people. It feels like she wants to keep me around until she finds someone that she likes. Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay, so first of all, it sounds like she is in an emotional place where she's very confused about what she wants. I don't know her. I don't know what her personality is like or what she's capable of, but most people don't just want to, string you along and, use you and then just discard you as soon as they find someone else. Like that's something that, maybe a narcissist or something might do. I don't know if she's a narcissist. I know not the majority of people in the world are narcissists. So chances are, I think it's pretty safe to say that unless you have any additional knowledge about her personality, it's probably okay to say that she's not a narcissist, and she's probably also not doing this intentionally to use you. What's probably going on is she's just generally and genuinely confused about what she wants for herself and what she wants out of all of this situation. She broke up with you. I think you said it was 2 months ago. And she's maybe feeling like, hey, there's some great things that Essex has to offer. But on the other hand, there's also a reason why we broke up. And, sometimes it seems like, hey, I'm really glad we broke up. Maybe I should see someone else. And the other times it's like, hey, maybe I made the wrong choice. Essex is actually really good. Maybe we should cuddle. Maybe we should, spend a lot of time together or something like that. So what do you do? If you feel like you're having a lot of great emotional connection, then it's probably it might not be riding the dragon. It could potentially be crisis point. We'd have to get on the phone and talk about this a little bit more to get to the bottom of this. But it could be crisis point. If you're getting some sort of like hot and cold back and forth stuff from her, it's probably more like riding the dragon. If it's riding the dragon, you're going to need to connect more on an emotional level, build more rapport, focus in on that emotional connection a lot more through things like rapport building, through things like all of that. If it is crisis point, then it might make sense to get her to play her hand a little bit more directly here by laying down some boundaries. Now, when it comes to all of this, riding the dragon, you're going to need to really know your way of being, because riding the dragon can be very complex and very emotionally taxing. It's very difficult to say to hear something like, yeah, let's hang out today and cuddle. I miss you so much. I want to, sleep with you. I'm not sure if I made the right choice with breaking up. And then the next day to say, what, actually, I think it is better that we broke up. I think we should see other people, right? That's going to be very hard to go from one to the other, to one to the other and back and forth again. So, it's easy to get lost in that if your way of being is not dialed in, if you don't know, what sort of way of being you're going to want to embody and really perfect that. Okay, that's going to be very critical for you, because it's going to be so easy to get pulled off course if you're just looking at the outside and looking at her for guidance and letting your way of being be determined by external outcomes. Okay, if on the other hand she is at a crisis point, your way of being is also going to be important here, because you're going to have some real conversations with her. I was on a coaching call yesterday with a client who is very obviously at crisis point with her partner. And we talked about how it was very important for her to have some you know, tough conversations about, like, hey, this can't go on the way that it is. This is what, this is what I want. It's okay if that's not what you want, but this is what I want. And really leverage that emotional connection. It's not necessarily going to always be easy. It can sometimes be scary for sure, but if you leverage that emotional connection, that's how you get through the whole crisis point situation there. Okay. Let me see, did I miss anything else? um that seems to be what we got from Essex. Okay, so Essex, that's what I make of your situation. That's what I'd recommend that you do moving forward. Going on, we have uh, Josh brings pain. Rough name there, buddy. Anyway, hey there, Clay. Here's a quick recap. My ex left me um, a year ago and has bounced around with a few guys and has bounced around with a few guys during that time. And I remember I told you a few months ago that we used to talk for 8 or 6 hours a day, and the emotional connection was very strong. But now she is no longer speaking to me or even her sister, which is very unusual behavior from her. This was after the guy she started dating, after only 10 minutes of leaving someone else. She has also said that she loved me months ago, but now she won't say anything and is just very distant in general after being with this new guy. Last time you told me to lower the pressure, and it sort of worked. 5. Oops, 5. I tried to meet in person. She wanted to at first, but called it off because I was in her town hanging with her sister and some of our friends that we both made in college. And that's what I see from Josh. Okay, so uh, this is sounding like very much riding the dragon sort of behavior here. A lot of hot and cold, like let's meet up, let's not meet up. Hey, I love you. Hey, now I'm suddenly like head over heels in love with this guy that I've known for a very short period of time here. So this is very much riding the dragon sort of behavior here. Um, I would be curious to know more about what you mean by lowering the romantic pressure kind of worked. What worked about it, what didn't work about it, and how did it change the interactions between the two of you after that whole conversation? Uh, but what it sounds like is that if the two of you are still in contact, I mean, it sounds like you're not actually. So if the two of you are not in contact, what you might want to do is just let her live with the consequence of her decision for a little while. Now, it sounds like there is a lot of back and forth, a lot of torn emotions on her side. So I don't think that she's not going to be able to stay out of contact with you indefinitely. I mean, that's the thing, guys. Like, I know that so many of you may think that your ex can just up and leave and just never feel anything. And granted, if the emotional connection is very low, then maybe they could do that. But a lot of you are selling yourself short when it comes to the actual emotional connection that you do have. What many times you need to do is either build it up a little bit more or just leverage that connection a little bit more, and you can often have a breakthrough in your situation. You know, an emotional connection is a very rare thing these days. There are a lot of reasons for that maybe I've gone on rants about before, but a lot of us are very starved for emotional connection in a lot of different ways for a lot of reasons. And if you can just show up as someone who's willing to be real and vulnerable, then that's going to stand out in an immensely positive way. And someone is going to not just be able to walk away from that, but they're going to miss you and want to be with you, especially if you embody the things that you need to embody and really focus in on that emotional connection the way that we've been talking about. It's going to make a very meaningful and substantial difference for you. And I don't want you to forget that. A lot of you do have emotional connection that you can, build up just a little bit more to get to that next level of breakthrough, or just leverage it a little bit more than you are to really get your ex to play their hand. But, it sounds like you might just have to let her live with the consequence of not having access to that emotional connection for a little while. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if she, opened up a little bit down the road, after a few weeks or something, when she realizes, hey, I really miss Josh Brings Pain, if that is your real name. Um, I'd like to have a conversation with your parents if that is your real name. Hey, why did you decide to name your child Josh Brings Pain? Anyway, um, um, thanks so much for that. I hope that helps you out. And let's go on. We have Maggie who says, "Hey, it's me again. What do you think men need emotionally and physically to be happy upon their arrival home from work? What is it you need to be emotionally happy upon your arrival home from work? Because, men are not an alien species. Women are not an alien species. People with avoidant attachment styles are not an alien species. People with insecure attachment styles are not an alien species. People with um, anxious attachment styles are not an alien species. We're all human, right? We all just have our own quirks about us. Some guys might need a little bit of time, a nice cold one or something when they get home. Others want a nice hug. Others, want to really greet you and talk to you and all that sort of stuff. There's no one size fits all here because we're not men, women, anxious people, avoidant people, people whose love language is this or that or anything else, right? We're all at the end of the day just humans, and we're just looking for our own little slice of happiness. So rather than thinking of him as a man who needs a certain thing when he gets home from work, ask yourself, what is it you know about him and his personality? If you were in his position, based off of everything that you know about him, what is it you'd want when you come home from work? And that's probably a better place to start. Anyway, Maggie, I hope that helps you out. Moving right along, we do have a Facebook user. I do try to highlight the Facebook users because I know that you cannot leave a super chat. So, and I also know there's not that many of you compared to the YouTube ones, but I'm gonna try and peek over the edge here. Anyway, Josh, wow, Medici, are you perchance related to the Medici family of Rome? Anyway, hi Clay. Yesterday you mentioned something about reward and relate cycles. What does that mean? I think it's about encouraging positive communication. My person and I started talking every few days about things that didn't go well in the relationship and trying to explain our perspectives. But I feel like we can go into uncomfortable conversations, or I feel a resistance happening. She would just say, I would rather not talk about this right now. And we change the subject or decide to keep the conversation. I don't know. I think it's just the thing with the Facebook comments. They just sort of cut off after a little while. So I can't get the whole thing here. Anyway, I apologize for that. But to answer your question about the relate and reward cycles, um, we don't really have time to go into this in full depth right now, but it's basically a conversational strategy to bring the conversation down to the emotional level and to meet your partner where they are at on an emotional level. Okay, so we all have different things in our. I feel so ridiculous just peeking over the edge of this comment here. I'm just gonna turn your post off so I can actually just like look normal here. But we all have different experiences in life. You grew up wherever you grew up, and I grew up wherever I grew up, and we have had different experiences in life. And if we happen to have grown up in the same place, or we happen to went to the school in the same place, or we happen to both have certain interests that are the same or something like that, yeah, we can start up a conversation and talk about things. But what if we don't have these sorts of things? What if you have no idea about the things that I'm interested in? I have no idea about the things that you're interested in. The thing is, it's hard to connect on that level. But the thing that we all do have in common is our emotions, which again is why we focus so much on the emotional connection. Um, and so we've all basically felt happiness, sadness, fear, insecurity, worry, hope, despair, depression, everything, the whole gamut at some point in our lives. And if we start to hone in on that emotional state rather than the external circumstances, then we actually have a better way to actually connect with someone on that emotional level. That's what the whole relating part is all about. The reward part is really just about encouraging someone to continue to open up to us in a vulnerable sort of way as we have this emotional rapport building. So basically, we're encouraging them to open up, and we're also relating to their emotional state that they're sharing with us. I mean, this is what we talk about inside of the X Solution program, emotional effortless connection, and also relationship repair. So that's a great place to start if you want more of a tutorial on all of that stuff. Um, Josh Brings Pain says he's kind of forced to do no contact for a month. Um, yeah, I don't think no contact would necessarily be a bad idea for you. Not necessarily because, you need to do it to, force her to feel something or anything like that, but just simply because it seems like she doesn't want to be in contact with you, and I don't want you to overplay your hand by pursuing her too aggressively and risking doing more damage to the emotional connection. Plus, I think it may allow her to feel the consequence of her choice a little bit more, by just not being in contact with you for a little bit. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily say that you need a month, but just go ahead and do it until it seems like enough time has passed. And then go ahead and make whatever you think is the appropriate move at that point. Either she contacts you, or then potentially, you might contact her just with a simple message to, calibrate to see where she's at emotionally. And, during this time would be a great time to focus in on your way of being. And also, I mean, like, we don't talk about this enough, but as you start to align your way of being with the outcome that you want, miraculous things can start to happen in your life. Just certain synchronistic things can just line up just right. This is how we can sometimes get these things where it's like, hey, I was just thinking about you, and then I went to the store and turned to the next aisle, and there you were. Or I was just about to call you, or these days, send you a text message, and then I just received one from you right now. This is how these seemingly miraculous things can start to happen in your life. Now, of course, you can't predict this or anything like that, but focusing in on your way of being is a great way to actually start to call these sorts of things into your experience. Some people might call it the law of attraction. I think it's a little bit of a simplistic way of looking at it. There's a lot more nuance to it, I think, than a lot of people realize. But we get into that inside of Aligned with Love. Anyway, if you do, once again, want to learn more about Aligned with Love, start working with us, maybe even get some coaching on top of that. We have options available for you down in the Google document link in the description if you're on YouTube, or in the comments section if you're on Facebook. Anyway, with that being said, thank you so much. Please take care, and I will talk to you in the next video.